Hey everyone, today's video is going to be a little bit different from normal. Today is my 7-year sober anniversary. And if you're newer to my channel or haven't heard my story before, essentially I started this YouTube channel at the low point of my life when I had hit rock bottom. I was unemployed and I was unemployable in my career path due to my struggles with alcoholism and kind of where that had taken me. In the 3 years leading up to the start of this YouTube channel, I was in about a 3-year stretch of severe alcoholism where I was completely out of control, emotionally drained, and alcohol was my crutch, and then it kind of took over my life. That was the context under which I started this YouTube channel, going back to that kind of escape that I'd always had in my life, the escapism of movies, this thing that had always brought joy to my life. And that's where I went in the midst of this low point of my life. And it's turned into something great, but it started from something really dark. And I'm not looking to tell my kind of complete story and all of this. It's going to be kind of the summarized version and some of the stuff that I've learned. I actually did a really good version of my story at a conference last year. If you want to hear kind of the complete version of it, check that out. I think that's probably the best version of me ever kind of telling my journey, my story. But the quick, short version of it is that I grew up with an alcoholic father, and there was a little bit of abuse in there. I didn't know it at the time. I would have said that maybe he was emotionally abusive or something like maybe. I don't even know if I'd use that word at the time. You just don't know what's normal and what isn't, what is okay and what not when you're a kid. You just know your experience. And there were certain things that happened with my dad that I just wrote them off as weird dad stories that were kind of funny. And then when I was in my 20s, I started sharing some of these stories I was working with teenagers at a church, and I started telling these stories as funny dad stories because I had all these funny stories. So, here's one about my dad. And it was this hilarious joke about him hitting my sister and I with a 2x4. And as I got to this punchline about the 2x4, nobody laughed. And in that moment, I paused and I realized, oh, that's not a funny story. That's an abuse story. And so there was a lot of dysfunction in my childhood. But also because I watched my dad be so toxic with alcohol. That wasn't something I ever experimented with as a teenager or anything like that and was ever drawn to in any fashion. And my dad actually drank himself to death when I was 20 and watched kind of him collapse from it, crumble and deteriorate mentally, physically, in every regard. This very successful, intelligent man just imploded because he never got control of the alcohol. And I never had a drink prior to this. I sipped my dad's beer or something, but never actual drinking prior to his death. And when I was 20, and then when I was 21, an incident happened where there was a friend of mine that something just terrible day involving his brother, and he came over, brought over a bottle of whatever, some hard liquor. He said never drunk before, but I was over 21. We were in a safe location. It was like, if ever there's a reason that it's okay to drink, this is a bad day. We're in a safe environment. I'm 21. There's any reason at all that this would be a response. This is a responsible way to do this. I know my family history, but just one time, this is a good exception. And that thinking, I always knew my personality is that I'm a addictive personality, pretty intense. I go for things. And, I knew my dad's history, and it was a little bit in the Chandler family line of alcoholism. And I knew I shouldn't drink. But in this moment, this is a good enough excuse. With what's going on with my friend, this is a good enough excuse. This is a bad enough day to justify it. And that line of thinking, that lie, is what kind of drove me and pushed me so far into dangerous behavior. And I didn't pick up drinking on any regular basis after that, but it opened a door. And so 6 months later, another bad day happened. Another incident occurred that was, this is bad. It's okay to drink. And that became kind of the pattern. I didn't drink regularly, but if a bad enough day happened, I would drink a lot. And even when I got married, 1 week before our 1-year anniversary, we got robbed, bad. Cleaned out. Our apartment was just wiped out when we were out of town for a couple of days. And when afterwards, it was kind of like during a vacation week. So I was just at home. So I just drank the whole week. It was a bad enough thing happened. It's stressful enough. So it was okay to drink the whole week. That was that lie in that pattern. And I ended up working at a church. And when you're working church world, you know everyone else's struggles. And so in that context, you care about everyone, you love everyone, but you know everything bad going on with them, which is also an environment for a lot of bad days. And so it was at one point in time, every 6 months to every 3 months to once a month to every Sunday night, it's okay to unwind. And then things just, it was that pattern of very slowly, there's always a little bit more of an excuse, more of a reason, kind of leading into some events that happened in 2012 where there was a suicide, a high school suicide. And I was like on site at the high school counseling people. And I'm emotionally, my reservoir for counseling and dealing with high stress situations like that, my reservoir is not very deep. And so it like really pushed me beyond what I'm prepared for, even what I'm trained for. And that was the sort of several other things. It was just like tragedy after tragedy in a very short period of time. And I was already dangling at the edge of wisdom. And so it just kind of went over. And that went on for about 3 years, shortly after it, because enough of these incidents happened in a very short period of time. I was already at the edge. It stopped being, I need an excuse to drink. And it became, I can't stop drinking. The alcoholism took over, not just poor decision making, not just a bad crutch, but the alcoholism, the crazy took over. And I very much spiraled out of control for about 3 years. And it's painful in a lot of ways because that's the first years when Liam is born. That's when Chloe is born. And I look at the pictures from that time period and I see I can tell if I'd been drinking or that there's a deadness in my eyes. Like there's things I can tell, or I just remember the day well enough to know that was a bad day. And most days were bad days. So I just can look at them. And I don't like looking at pictures of myself during the first few years of their life because it was such a dark period for me while I'm trying to work at a church, which is not a good combination. It's a real bad combination when you're an alcoholic that is spiraling out of control, working with teenagers. And, I tried to fix myself. That didn't work. I tried to go to AA in private, and that didn't work. And I had some windows where I could just through willpower fix myself for a brief window of time, muscle up and do it. But that's not really how change happens. So in 2016, beginning of June, end of May, beginning of June, I really started to spiral out of control. And there was a lot of these kind of, I'm going to stop drinking for 3 months and then relapse. And I did one of these where I stopped for a while, hard relapsed, and just things were unraveling. Like I'd always been pretty good at being a functional alcoholic, that I could get things done and people didn't notice something was wrong with me until that 2016, beginning of the summer, where just I couldn't even function. It was obvious. Some people started to say some things to me and the lies came undone. So I was like, it's time to come clean. And told my wife, who always knew more than other people. It was all like part of the toxicity of alcoholism is that you're lying to everyone. You're lying to your spouse. You're lying to the person in the household, and you're constantly making excuses. And it's just a world of lies that you're living in to try and feed your addiction. Came clean to her, came clean to my mom, which was awful, and then sent a note to that leadership of the church and resigned. And when you're in church world, your resume I have all these skill sets, all these things that I can do, very talented, but it's also very niche. Like it's not real obvious on how to take all the things that I did in church world to Dell or whatever. And I'm not inclined as a person to naturally transition in that regard. And so I was unemployed and kind of unemployable. And that's the window where I started my YouTube channel. And to be perfectly clear in all of this, the church that I worked at is still the church that I attend. I went there yesterday. It's actually always kind of a hard Sunday for me because it was graduate Sunday was the Sunday where I imploded really. And people were like, something's wrong with Sean, because I was doing graduate for my students that had graduated and talking to the whole church. And I was just messed up from the night before. And people were like, something's not right here. So every Sunday whenever they do graduate Sunday, it's really hard for me because it's always a reminder of the worst of me, my biggest failures, my most humiliating moments. That was yesterday, and I'm still at the same church, and there's a lot of churches aren't known for their grace and showing support when their leadership fails. I'm still at the church. That tells you everything about how they supported my family during this transition, how they accepted us. When you do life together, it's complicated. Churches are families, and families have struggles and issues. And I, of course, had all of that with this church that I've been at now for 15 years. I got a phone call in May of 2015, 15 years ago, a couple weeks ago, asking if I could help with the middle schoolers. Liam started in the middle school at this church that I was recruited to 15 years ago. So we've been there 15 years, a huge chunk of my life, and done a lot of life with them. And that's a great story in and of itself, that some churches do know how to help people when they're in hard times and show grace the way that they need to. And people ask me all the time, like, what's my story of, like, how did I change? How did I turn things around? I can't detach my story, my recovery, from being a person of faith. I'm a Christian, churchgoer, believe in Jesus. And I can give you some practical things about cut off your access to money, cut off your access to buying alcohol or whatever your addiction of choice is, cut off access, cut off funds. Like, I didn't carry money. I didn't carry credit cards for a long time, or any debit cards or anything, any cards for a long time during my recovery, to make it so that I couldn't just sneak out and relapse. There's things like that, giving people full access to whatever I can do for a window of time. Like, wife, check on me on my phone, see where I'm going, spy on me. I hate being spied on, but there's things like that. Give people permission to see everything that you're doing. So there's just transparency. Not everyone, but people that you trust, that love you, that if you want help breaking off a cycle of addiction, cut off access to it, give people transparency, rearrange your life so it removes the things that trigger you, that set you off when you go to specific places. Do all of those things. But at the end of the day, I don't think that addiction and things like that are cured through those Band-Aids. They do help. They are tips that are useful. That's kind of what I can give you. At the end of the day, mine is a grace story, that I am a sinner in need of a savior. I believe Jesus died on the cross for our sins, and I, as a pastor, as much as anyone, was a sinner in need of a savior, in need of grace. And sometimes when you're in church world and you are a pastor, it's easy to lose track of your grace story, or the importance of grace, because you could feel like you're doing really good compared to a lot of other people, because you can see what they're up to, and you need to fail horribly to even understand grace. And that's kind of a lot of my journey. It says a couple times in the Bible, in particular in James, that God opposes the proud and gives grace to the humble. For me, for years, I did not get the help that I needed because I was afraid of losing my reputation. I was afraid of losing my job. I was afraid of that. How would I provide if I can't be a pastor anymore? I was afraid of losing my identity. All of that is pride. God opposes the proud and gives grace to the humble. The humble person says, I can't do this, but you can, and surrenders to God's plan. And so what that meant for me was I reached a point in time where I went, I'm not going to just try and fix myself going to secret AA meetings. I'm going to go out in the open and let everybody know the details of my life that I hate the most, that I'm most embarrassed of, and resigned. And in a day, lost my entire reputation that I'd been building for over a decade. People that had known me as Pastor Sean, Pastor Chandler, whatever, that had trusted me with their kids, like instantly they're rethinking me in light of all this. It just had to, I don't care about looking good. I want to be good and healthy. I want to be the person that I'm pretending to be. And that requires surrender. So went to elder board of the church, leaders of the church, the pastor at my church, and just said, hey guys, whatever you want me to do is what I'm going to do. If you want me to leave, my family will leave. If you want me to stay, we will stay. If you want me to go, whatever it is, I will do what you do. I'm surrendering to your guidance, your plan for what that looks like for me. And it wasn't about my comfort or anything like that. It was about doing what was right, getting healthy. And I think grace stories start with humility and surrender and saying, I can't, but God, you can. And trusting God's community, the church, to do that. And that's tough because there's a lot of bad churches out there and a lot of churches that you can't trust. And maybe I shouldn't, like, there's a universe, multiverse, or whatever, where a church didn't respond the way they did. And things went bad. And maybe that could have been the case. But that's not what happened. I'm still there 7 years later. Or in another sense, 15 years later. I've been there a long time through a lot of life. That's a grace story. And I like I said, I can give you tips if you're not a person of faith on how to help with a few things. But at the end of the day, I think true transformation comes from the inside out. And that comes from a relationship with God and surrendering to him, admitting I can't, I'm a sinner, but you can. And the part where it gets wild to me is that, like I said, I started my YouTube channel in that low point. And the same window of time where I started my YouTube channel, posting the early videos, I got some day labor work at a local school that was being built, like a block from my house. For 2 weeks, I worked there for day labor. And it was literally me with a bunch of ex-cons, people that just got out of prison, like that level of like they struggled to get employment. So that all they can get is doing day work, building tables and desks and stuff. And like a month before, I've been working at a church, and now I'm doing day labor. It's the only work I can get with ex-cons, building desks at this school. And jump forward less than 3 years after that date, I was back in that same school where my son was attending. And I was like the keynote speaker for career day as the person with the interesting career as a YouTuber. And why do I say that? Because I thought my life would be over if I came clean. I thought my life would be over. My pride said, this is it. If you come clean and get help, your life will be over. And the reality was I was not living. I was just enslaved, trapped by the alcoholism, the lies, the deception, and was just miserable all the time. And the only way to be set free was to come clean and get help. And as soon as I did that, I could really start to live. And I thought, even as a pastor, as a Christian, I thought all this influence that I have, it'll go away. No one will listen to me. I can't help other people if I come clean, because then I'm just the mess of a person. And that was another lie. Because once again, I think even sharing my story right now, I have much larger of a platform than I ever had as a pastor. Now, it's not as deep as when you're someone's pastor, but I have a megaphone going out to far more people now than I did when I worked at the church. And even just over the last few days, where I've kind of promoted my Instagram a little bit and tell people you can DM me over there, I've had countless people DM me specifically about me being open about my struggles. Like I thought my influence and my ability to help people would die if I came clean. And the opposite was true. It opened it up to the whole new category. And beyond that, just I look at what my life looks like now, of just happiness, satisfaction, what my home life is like, and just the cool opportunities that come along with being a YouTuber. I could have imagined any of this back at the beginning of 2016 before everything. I couldn't imagine where things would lead if I stopped trying to fix myself. And I just look at this year in particular, where I've been to like Hollywood award shows. I've been, led panels at Comic Cons where I'm like hanging out with people that I've been watching on YouTube for 10 years. And now we're like buddies and text with each other. And like all of these things that seem so foreign and distant and impossible have become like my day-to-day life. And I'm just constantly grateful for the second chance. And for anyone out there that's kind of struggling in the middle of your own battle with addiction, whatever that looks like, mine was alcohol, but that might be something different for you. I would recommend or realize that there is life on the other side. It is horrible going through the process. It is terrible humbling yourself. But you have to reach that point in time where the pain of the same is greater than the pain of change. And I was miserable. And I know some of you watching right now, you are miserable and you know it. The only way to break out of that is to come clean and stop the lies, stop trying to fix yourself in secret. And like I said, as a person of faith, I think true life change comes with a relationship with Jesus. I think it's through faith is real transformation takes place on the inside out. But you don't fix yourself. And there is hope. There is amazing things that can happen. And one of my favorite verses for a very long time has been Ephesians 3:20 that says, to him who's able to do immeasurably more than we can ask or imagine. And I always found that to be such a fascinating verse. As soon as I first read it, I went, that's really compelling right there. And then I just look at my own life over the last 7 years of how bleak, how like jacked up everything was, how messed up it was because of my addiction, the lies and the secrets, and everything that's happened over the last 7 years. All of the amazing opportunities, even being able to share my story here and help other people. You know, God has done immeasurably more than I ever could have asked or imagined. And it all goes back to, at some point in time, saying, I care more about being healthy, being a better person, living my grace story, than looking like I'm living my grace story. And that changed everything. Like, the lies didn't protect me. The lies chained me. They ruined me. They made me miserable. And coming clean is what set me free and opened up all the opportunities. And so I'm eternally grateful for that. I'm eternally grateful to all of you that watch, like, subscribe, comment, share, all of that fun stuff, because even that is a part of my redemptive story, part of my recovery story. So thank you so much for being a part of that. And I'm just so grateful on a daily basis of that I've been successful in my recovery, that I have an audience, that people care what I have to say about things. So thank you so much. Every single one of you watching right now, I am so grateful for you. And if you're struggling right now, there is hope. There is transformation. There are possibilities. Great things can still happen, but not while you're stuck in the addiction, trying to keep it a secret. So please seek the help that you need and be willing to go through the hard work. That's all I got for you. Thank you so much for watching. And if you know someone that maybe my story can help them, share this video with them, or share the DCX conference version of it. That's like probably the most concise, tightest version that I've ever done of this one. I literally just hit record today. It was like, I wanted it to be 10 minutes. It's never 10 minutes when I'm sharing my story. It's never 10 minutes whenever I'm doing anything on here. But truly, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being a part of my story. And keep talking movies and TV too much.